But last week, we caught up with the coolest nerds in digital culture. Let's take a look.
Big Bang Theory is the #1 sitcom on television, and in case you've been living under a rock somewhere, sci-fi films are all the rage at the movie theaters.
Well, it looks like it's chic to be geek.
Okay,
Get it, Shannon?
I see you, fashionista.
Chic to be geek. Well, joining us with a roundup of the coolest and craziest nerd conventions are the hosts of the Fan Bros Show, DJ Benjamin and Chico Leo.
How you guys doing?
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you dance now.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
Dance.
Right.
Is that chic?
That's chic. Or it will be.
Right.
Well, talk to us about why it's chic to be geek. I mean, you used to be a nerd and that was a bad thing. Now, if you're not a nerd, you're a nerd.
Right, because I think kids today would rather grow up to be Mark Zuckerberg than captain of the football team.
That's a good point.
I mean, and the internet has actually brought a lot of this geek culture to the mainstream. I mean, people, they go online and this stuff comes right into their living room. And when you look at, the TV shows, the movies, the media, this summer, almost every weekend, the #1 movie is a geek movie, a sci-fi or some kind of genre, the Lone Ranger, something like that, that all would have been, a low-budget thing just for, a few fans just 10, 20 years ago, and is now mainstream. And it's all over the world. It's not just happening in America. These things are huge overseas.
Well, it's gotten so popular that they have these huge conventions, like all the time. Every weekend I'm seeing another geek quote-unquote convention, nerd convention, something. And some of these things are really themed. Tell us about these themes and why they're creating these things.
Well, there's like different conventions for pretty much every aspect of geek culture. You have Comic-Con in New York City, which is mainly about comic books and films and whatnot. Dragon Con in Atlanta, which is for role-playing games and sci-fi.
Dragon Con?
Dragon
Yeah,
Con.
that's been around for a while.
Yeah, that's one of
That
the
sounds
oldest
fun.
and biggest ones.
Is that from Dungeons and Dragons?
Definitely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
You had a Star Wars celebration in Europe, which is huge. It's a big event in Germany that's specifically for Star Wars.
Because doesn't Return of the Jedi turn 30?
Turns 30. They're actually going to have
Yeah.
a big screening outdoors, they said, for it.
And the last British census, apparently, something like 5% of the country put Jedi for religion, or something like that. It definitely was
Jedi
more than
religion.
1%. Yeah, had put for under their religion, they put Jedi, and maybe that actually might say something. People are a little less religious these days, and people are always looking for something. And just looking at this guy you have back here dressed as a Na'vi, I mean, that takes a lot of commitment, to do that. But the thing is he's not alone. There are thousands of people like him, and they get together at these conventions and they meet up. So even if you're the only one in your town who likes to dress up like a Na'vi, there's millions of people out there like that.
And
I
the
think-
Na'vi is from Avatar.
It's from Avatar.
From Avatar,
Yes.
okay.
And I think that's what, like you said earlier, what really brought it together was the internet. Because before, you would be the only weirdo in your town. But now you can find people who are just like you everywhere, and so you don't seem as weird. And you can all meet up somewhere. You can meet on the internet, and then you can meet in real life, and everyone can relate to each other.
So what happens at these conventions? I've never been to one. What
Let's
goes
start with
on?
Comic-Con. Let's start there and tell us about that. We'll go through a few different conventions that you can tell us about.
Okay.
Okay, well,
You've been
Comic-Con.
to Comic-Con,
Yeah,
right?
I've actually been. I didn't dress up and go, but
No?
I did go for a news story.
A
when I
lot
was
of people
reporting.
dress up.
And I had a great time, actually.
You did?
It was so much fun.
So what happens at Comic-Con? I've never been before.
There are panels related to everything from there'll be a panel on women in comics
Okay.
to they'll get African Americans, a group of African American creators to talk about their experiences in comics. They'll premiere new movies and TV shows for the hardcore geek audience who will then go out and disseminate. For example, they showed the Lost premiere at Comic-Con 2 months before it aired on TV.
Oh, really?
But so everyone else was hearing, this is a great show. Even before it came on, there was great word of mouth. They did the same thing with the Avengers before they released it. They had a panel with with the cast, the director, and it's gotten to the point there's 30, 40 panels going on at the same time. You couldn't even go to all of them. But there's a lot more than that. I mean, people are dressing up, people are meeting. It works for the professional people, the artists and writers who are working in different, from different locations. Sometimes this is the only time they can meet up. So when DC Comics killed Superman, they plotted that all out at Comic-Con over the next year of how that happened.
Well, the interesting thing is it's not just comic books anymore, that they've expanded to so much more, right?
Yeah, definitely. Movies, like he said before, all the movies usually had their trailers. Like this year, Comic-Con, well, actually at the Star Wars celebration, everyone is looking forward to seeing there's a new animated Star Wars show coming out, and they're going to premiere it there. So it's like most people go to the conventions, I mean, not just like you said, to dress up and to meet people, but just to see what's coming next in the geek world.
Okay, so let's talk about, Star Trek, After Earth. What's that one, World War Z? Why are these movies doing so well in theaters? I mean, they're making millions upon millions of dollars.
They are. People want to see them, and people are seeing them, and that's still surprising to us. I mean, it's gratifying. Some people feel like, oh, these are just fair weather geeks. Whether
fair weather geeks. You're not a real geek.
They want to just ride the boat.
I don't necessarily subscribe to that. They're definitely hitting a chord with people, and whether it's sort of just the crazy things that are going on in the world, or whether it's just because people weren't exposed to this stuff until the advent of the internet. But these things have become what used to be very marginalized is very mainstream now. People really are into zombies.
And there's even a subculture now called Steampunk that's been created under sci-fi.
Right,
Explain that.
What is that? Steampunk?
Yeah, steampunk is it's like a variation of sci-fi where people take it's like
Wild Wild
West is like a steampunk movie, the one with Will Smith, where it was set in the Old West, but they had more futuristic technology.
It's very mechanical, and there's no electricity, but things run on steam. And so it's very sort of Victorian. There's even actually a couple of steampunk rappers out there.
Really?
What?
Yeah, you can go on YouTube and type steampunk and hip hop, and there's a couple of artists who've made steampunk hip hop videos.
It's like the
wild. So it's definitely affected. And I'm not talking about Will Smith's song.
Okay, you guys are nerding out on me.
Yeah.
Come back to the mainstream.
But there's anime conventions where people get together and dress up like their favorite anime characters, which is
an anime is Japanese animation. Okay.
Exactly, it's a very specific type of Japanese animation, which has all its own little traditions and subculture things. And there's furries.
Now, what are furries? Because, I read the Vanity Fair piece about furries, a 5,000-word expose about this furry world, and apparently these people like to dress up as stuffed animals and have sex? Are you kidding me?
We got to clarify this.
Yeah, it's not really about the sex. A lot of people have a lot of misconceptions because of things like the Vanity Fair article. There was an episode of Entourage where they depicted them as just being about sex, and it's really just not about that. It's more that the people, it's like a transgender person who doesn't identify with any one sex. They more identify with animals, so they would like to, dress up as animals. So,
and it goes everywhere from people putting on full suits to just wearing little ears and a tail. But they definitely have their own worldview, and so they want to get together because, as we know, not a lot of people share that worldview. They want to get together with other people like them, and that's what they do at these conventions. Now, I don't know what goes on in the hotel rooms after hours, but in general, it's about arts and crafts and,
arts and crafts, you say?
All kinds of stuff.
What they call it these days?
I know, a lot of stuff, related to that culture that's not necessarily related to sex or kink.
Tickle me, Elmo.
Ooh, I like that.
Okay, last one we have to talk about is the gamers. Now, some of the gamers don't necessarily consider themselves geeks, but they're gamers, and there's conferences for them as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The E3 convention takes place during the summer. The electronic, I can't remember what E3 stands for, but it's basically the biggest convention. All the video game companies will be there to represent. They'll all show off their new games, everything that's being previewed, everything that's coming out. And this year is really big because Xbox and PlayStation both have their new systems coming out.
Right.
Even I know that's a big deal.
Yeah, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 are both during the show off. And there hasn't been much news from them yet. So the E3 is where you'll see all the new games, all the new technology, everything that's going into these new systems. So it's going to be a really big year for them.
Okay, well, before we go, all the geek energy has killed our wall back here. We've gone to the dark zone.
Right.
But would you guys ever, or have you ever, dressed up to go to one of these conventions?
I have not dressed up to go to a convention, but I've definitely been jealous of people who, people start spending time, 6 months in advance. They start thinking about what they're going to go as.
Really?
Because people, they want to find
deal.
like some original character. Like, you don't want to dress up as Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman.
that's boring.
And so people are going on Twitter, what should I go as for Comic-Con 6 months in advance? And people are tweeting back thousands of suggestions. And people put a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort and a lot of talent into some of their costumes.
I should go one year.
Yes.
What should I dress up
What would
as?
you dress as?
I don't know.
Storm from the X-Men.
Oh, that would be hot.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right.
He's been thinking about that the whole time. He's like, she would be great.
You're gonna have to dye your hair white.
Staring at you like, oh. All right, Fred, any dressing up?
I hope to this year.
Okay, this year. We'll get to
definitely.
that. We'll have to come back and show us your costumes.
All right,
Most
fan
definitely.
bros. Fan,
Well,
yes.
good.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Fan
So
bros,
much fun.
good to see
Thanks
you
for
guys.
having us
Good to see you
again.
again.
Thanks for
Great
breaking
seeing
our
you.
wall.
Right. It's that geek energy.
It's like-
For all the people at home, if you were going to dress up and go to a convention, what character would you be? Tweet us about it at Arise TV 360.